It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy, Millsy. Back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew version 1.0 deck list of the commander in front of us in my quest to brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. The deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. As well as I'd really appreciate if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider doing all that YouTube stuff for me. I'd really appreciate it. But today, we're starting off Abs in week. And we're starting it off strong with a very popular commander from the first time that we came to Khans of Tarkir, back in Khans of Tarkir, in Anafenza the Foremost. A 3-mana 4/4 human soldier that says whenever that they attack, we're going to go ahead and put a counter on another target tapped creature we control. And if a creature card we put into our opponent's graveyard from anywhere, we exile it instead. Again, a very, I guess, intriguing commander. I think there's a lot of commanders that have come out since Anafenza, and some probably are going to do a better job at what you want them to do. In fact, I think the new Felithar that we're going to talk about in a couple days, to me, kind of does a better job at what Anafenza wanted to do. But I think Anafenza still is a great commander in that it kind of gives you this rest in peace, Leyline of the Void style type ability for our opponent's creatures, can really hose our opponent's creatures right from going to the graveyard. But Anafenza will help spread out counters, and it's important because the counters can be really useful in certain creatures. We'll talk about plenty of other ways to hand out counters, how we can use the counters for our good, and then certain creatures that you can put counters on that are really just going to give you value. But I want to say a quick thank you to the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in seeing all of our videos early for just $1 a month, check it out down below. But all right, there's a lot of ways to hand out counters. And like I talked about with Felithar, who we're going to talk about in a couple of days, I think Felithar does what I think Anafenza wants to do just a teeny bit better, especially with all the access we have in our colors. Felithar, done in the absence of 3-mana 3/3, it says whenever it enters or attacks, we can sacrifice a non-land permanent. If we do, we just put a counter on each creature we control. I like spreading the counters out on our board a little bit more, and we'll talk about what we can do with that ability. But I think she fits right into our options here. Low Guardian says at the beginning of combat on your turn, if we control our commander, we can put a counter on each creature we control. Mikaeus can take a counter off itself to put a counter on each other creature we control. Can be a really nice option for Anafenza. Tap Mikaeus, take a counter off of it, put it on all your creatures. Anafenza attacks, right, putting a counter back on Mikaeus, right, and then you're kind of always giving your creatures a counter each turn. Kind of nice. Sovereign Akaneka, whenever it attacks, each creature that has power greater than their base power puts counters on equal to the difference, just growing your creatures every turn. The new Warden of the Grove puts a counter on itself at the beginning of our end steps, and then every other non-token creature comes in, gets to endure X, where X is the number of counters on it. So either you put that many counters on that creature, or you make a spirit token. Again, kind of nice to go a little bit wider that way with that ability. Fangs of Colonia puts counter on a creature, and then doubles the number of counters. And then double number of counters on each creature that had a counter put on this way. It's worded that way. You can either pay 2 to do this for one creature, or you can pay 6 to do this for your entire board, just giving them counters and doubling them, making them even better. Baron Step Siege can give us a counter on each creature we control on each end step. Same thing with Virtual Loyalty. Virtual Loyalty just gets to add that we get to untap them. And then, of course, the classic in Cathar's Crusade, putting a counter on each creature we control whenever another creature comes in. Just a nice suite of enchantments to really help us out there. But we also want to pay off the fact that our creatures have counters on them. And there's a lot of ways we can do that. We have things like the new Bulwark Ox. Whenever it attacks while saddled, you put a counter on another creature, but the ability we really care about is it can sack itself to give all of our creatures with counters on them hexproof and indestructible till end of turn, hopefully avoiding it, avoiding a board wipe. Champion Lambholt gets a counter on it every time another creature comes in, and it prevents our opponent's creatures with power less than Lambholt's to block our creatures, leading to some pretty big combats. Carmen's a really interesting one. She's going to get counters from Felithar and anyone sacrificing a permanent. And then when she attacks, we can get things back from our graveyard. My thought here was obviously people are going to be trying to kill our creatures, especially our value enchantments. So my thought is Carmen's a good way to get them back while being a nice flying threat for us. Felissa, Fang of Silvercrow, whenever a non-token creature we control dies, if it had counters on it, we make a bunch of Inklings equal to the counters on them. Again, we don't mind this at all, just more value for creatures on the battlefield that can have counters put on them. Hamza is going to cost less for each counter on a creature, for each creature with a counter on it, and then when it's on the battlefield, all our creatures cost less for each creature we control with a counter on it, just hopefully bringing them down to just colored pips, right? Making it so much easier to get our key creatures down. Rishkar comes in and gives a creature a counter up to 2 creatures, and then gives all of our creatures with counters on the ability to tap for green mana. Again, especially great for those tokens. Damning Verdict can destroy all creatures with no counters on them. Synchronized Charge can give 2 creatures, up to 2 creatures, a counter, or 2 on 1 if we want to. And then all of our creatures with a counter on them just get Vigilance and Trample till the turn. I also really like this spell because you can harmonize it back out of your graveyard for even more value. Inspiring Call draws us cards for each creature with a counter on, and then gives them all indestructible. Kind of a nice 2-for-1, right? Protecting our board and drawing us cards. The Ozolith, right, that classic counters card is going to take the counters off of a permanent, right, that leaves the battlefield. And in the start of our combat, we can move all the counters on Ozolith onto a target creature, just souping them up, making them really hard to deal with. Of course, we got the new Innkeeper's Talent. Hands out a counter at the start of each of our combats. On level 2, we can give all of our permanents with counters on them Ward 1, a great way to start protecting some of our things. And then at level 3, turns into that Doubling Season, Branching, Evolution style ability to double up the amount of counters that are put on things. And then Retribution of the Ancients is just a very interesting removal piece. So we can pay a black and remove X counters from among creatures we control to give a creature -X/-X till end of turn. I like this. It's instant speed. We're probably at some point going to have more than enough counters laying around just to really leverage that for our benefit. But all right, well, how do we hit harder, right? Because I think the nice thing is there's a lot of creatures that care about buffing our creatures that have counters on them. Battle Priest gives them lifelink. Absent Falconer gives them flying. Dustshell Crawler gives them trample. Envoy gives them lifelink. Marek Nightblade gives them death touch. Tuskguard Captain gives them trample. You can start to see where now our whole board is getting these abilities, including these creatures, because all of them can get a counter on themselves as well by outlasting. But the truth is, now we're just making our board even harder to deal with, because now they have all these extra abilities. To me, especially lifelink and trample, because both of those are abilities that are either make us harder to kill or make it easier to kill our opponents as we're committing to the board. I wanted to end the note on a fun combo that we can do with both Felithar and a card here, Rosie Cotton of Southlane. Rosie Cotton says whenever she enters the battlefield, we're going to make a food token. And then whenever you make a token, you can put a counter on another creature you control other than Rosie. There's 2 creatures we're playing in the deck. In fact, there's more than these 2, but these were the 2 I just decided to show. And Herd Bailiff and Scurry Oak. They both basically say whenever 1 or more counters are put on them, you just make a token. That would lead to a loop with Rosie Cotton where we will just continue to put counters anywhere you want to. It's not an infinite loop because we can choose a creature other than Scurry Oak, unless, I guess, technically, unless they're the only... Well, no, they wouldn't be the only other creatures on the battlefield because as soon as you make a token with them, they wouldn't be. But you can do this an arbitrarily large amount of times to make a bunch of tokens. We also have things like Basking Broodscale in the deck that makes a token too. But this is kind of fun because both Rosie and Anafenza can put counters on Scurry Oak or Herd Bailiff every turn, especially something like Herd Bailiff is probably going to be attacking, right? And you can be getting these tokens and go wide, right, as we kind of set up our board. But I've said it before on the show, I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is my version 1.0 shot at Anafenza. And I think going into testing, I'd want to know, like, am I getting enough counters onto my things? I think we are with the nice cross-section of, like, all these abilities we have. But truthfully, like, I think sometimes just because you think you have enough on paper doesn't mean that it's not going to be the case. Or it'll be the case in testing. I labeled this deck a bracket 2 because I'll be honest, I think with Anafenza not handing out a ton of counters on her own, I worry that we're not going to be able to hang with some of the other decks that'll, I guess, be an average bracket 3. But I could easily see you wanting to call this deck a bracket 3 and it would still be fine. You know, there's no game changers. It's not like it has to be a 3. But I put something like Stalwart Successor down. Here's a creature that just says whenever 1 or more counters are put on a creature you control, if it's the first time counters have been put on that creature this turn, they get an extra counter. I think this is really helpful with things like Mikaeus, because then they get double the counters. It's kind of a hardened scales ability once per turn. I think we have enough of these abilities in the deck, but I think it's good to have an option sitting in your maybe board so that if you get into games and you're not seeing enough of those style abilities, you can add another one. I love the idea of something like Unbreakable Formation. It's a protection spell, But if we use it in our main phase, all of our creatures get a counter on them in Vigilance and Indestructible, the regular Indestructible, just allowing for a big attack. I really like the idea of that, and I think it makes a ton of sense. We're just also, I think we have enough protection spells in the deck already. And then Absent Ascendancy just comes in and puts a counter on each of our creatures. I like the idea that when our creatures, our non-token creatures die, we get to make a spirit token. I'm just unsure of how much this really helps us, considering we can play other things that just put a counter on all of our things. Again, I think the death trigger is the thing that we care about the most on Absent Ascendancy. So, maybe if we don't have enough recourse and we don't always have the protection, maybe it makes sense to look into something like the Ascendancy. But let's get into our favorite thing we'd like to do here on the channel and get into our playtest. Remember, the goal of playtest on our channel is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not to show off our best plays, but it's to get in some game scenarios and start to understand how our deck functions. Here we're keeping a 3-lander with Kami of Whispered Hopes. Basically, here's a Hardened Scales type ability, but it's on a creature that taps for X mana, where X is its power, which is a really nice thing because we're going to tap it for mana, and then Anafenza could attack, right, putting another counter on the Kami. We got some Rampant Rabbit Growth. There's the Sovereign I can how, and then Drana, whenever it hits a player, puts a counter on each of their attacking creature. So I think we're just kind of work our way up to either Anafenza or Kami. My thought here is get the Swamp with the Rampant Growth. That way we even out our colors. We see Hamza there. I mean, as we come into turn 4, there's a lot of ways we could look at this. I guess my thought is the Kami. But, because my problem here, right, is I really would want Anafenza to put the counter on the Kami to grow its power. But neither of them have haste, right? So which makes more sense? Anafenza first or Kami first, right? I guess for me in my head, the scenario where this would matter is, am I playing against a graveyard deck? If I am, I would dump Anafenza out as soon as I can, allowing it to really take advantage of hosing that opponent. Otherwise, I think that I like the idea of just getting the Kami in. On turn 5, I think I like the idea of just getting Anafenza in. I wish I had something else for do with that 2 mana. We finally got that double black for Drana. We could just as much do Drana and then Anafenza next turn, but we don't really have anything great to follow Anafenza up, or to Drana up next turn with. There's the Inspiring Call. That's at least somewhat helpful. My thought here is Drana. I mean, I could just slam down Hamza, but the truth is, I'm trying to think what makes the most sense. Sovereign is going to be great next turn, adding counters on our things. Shalai could put counters on all of our creatures. So wait, hold on. So Kami's tapping for 1. So we could do Drana plus Shalai, attack with, right, Anafenza, put a counter on Kami. Right now, at least it's growing. And now when we come back to our turn, right now, this is up to 2 power. This can attack this turn. This can still give all of our creatures a counter. But if I do it, it's 6 mana. It's unfortunately on Sovereign's attack, so I can't like stagger Drana and Sovereign. Although if I attack this turn with Drana and give counters on all of our other creatures, right, Hamza does come a little cheaper. I do have enough mana to do this for 2 into Sovereign and hold up the Inspiring Call. But I'm just trying to think of, if I do this for 6, this puts a counter on everybody, right? We have at least another counter coming from Anafenza and at least some for Drana. Hamza is now down to just 2 mana. Kami's now tapping for 3, so we could still get Sovereign down this turn. Go to attack with Anafenza and Drana. I guess I'd probably just put the counter on, right, Kami. I am now realizing that those counters would have been doubled up because of its ability that I wasn't paying attention to. Drana would hit first, right, putting 2 counters on everything else. And now, right, we're in a good space with our attacks where we're going to get even better next turn when Sovereign goes off, and we've got hopefully this protection, right, to leave up, next turn. Now the Kami's just producing a ton of mana, which is huge. We can get hands in for pretty cheap, but I'll just leave up the Inspiring Call. Again, attack again. Each of these is basically just going to have their counters doubled, right, because that's how much they're up on their original base, right? but it's 4+1 there, 2+1, 4+1, and then 6+1 to be 13. Then I think it makes more sense to attack here with the Kami. I guess I'd put the counter on Sovereign, right, just to get it access to its counters for next turn. Drana's going to hit first, right, putting counters on everything. We've got a couple huge attackers, bunch of threats, right, and then we have the Inspiring Call, right, just to back them up so they just can't get wiped off the table. Let's get into playtest number 2. Keeping a 4-lander with Carmen. Evolution Witness, an example of a creature that when a counter's put on it, we can basically return a permanent from our graveyard back to our hand, and then Nature's Lore for some ramp. So we can kind of see what we get access to. There's the Kami for next turn. Hallmark Siege is an interesting card. We can either have a creature get a counter on it and menace each turn, or whenever a counter's put on our creature, we can draw a card once per turn. A very interesting ability. Again, either way, very useful for our deck. I'm trying to think which makes the most sense. It has to be an attacking creature for the counter. I guess it could grow Anafenza, right? And it could grow Carmen. So that wouldn't be terrible either. I think I'm just going to Nature's Lore. Just get some ramp out of the way. Coming back to our turn, I guess we'll throw the Bojuka Bog in tap, get Kami down. Well, could go Conclave plus Evolution Witness too. Oh, Evolution Witness 3. I thought it was 2. I think I'll just do that. Get the Kami down. This turn, Lenore's an interesting one. You can put a counter up to one creature you control. Then if you have 3 or more creatures with different powers, you draw a card, which is going to be really easy for us to do. Right now we have 6 mana at our disposal with the... if I do this plus oh no, I can't do that plus Anafenza. If I do that plus Conclave Mentor, right? Oh no, that would count for that, right? Being... If I go to combat and put the counter here, that could be 3 mana to get something like Evolution Witness down. We just put the Mentor in. Lenore goes off. So we would put 2 counters on Kami, and then now we have 3 or more, so we would draw a card. Again, the nice part here is you're hitting out that counter no matter what. This is doubling up on those. Right, doubling up on those counters that are being put on. Markbat Walker is kind of an interesting one. You can put counters on it. You can pay mana, put counters on it. When it dies, you draw that many cards. But now we're at 3/8 mana. We could do like Anafenza plus the Mikaeus for a couple counters on it. We could get down Carmen to start looking to try to get things back if things get removed. I like the idea of trying to get Anafenza down so that we can pay it off next turn. And like I said, 5 mana. I like the Mikaeus at 4. I like the idea of just getting down Hollowmurk and something else. The fun part about Marketback Walker is we could get it back with Evolution Witness. We just don't have any way to sacrifice it at the moment. I guess I'll go with Mikaeus for 4 on his counters. Lenore will go off. I guess I would just put the counters on Kami, right? Get it so it's able to tap for more, draw a card. And then we could make an attack with these guys, but it ain't looking as good at the moment. Here, we're in a better state. This is going to start putting counters. Remember, it can put the counters on Mikaeus, so we can kind of get that fun thing going. I like the idea of something like Market Back just to get it set up so it could start drawing us cards whenever it dies. I've got 5, 8, 10 mana. Well, if I remove the one from Mikaeus, I add 2, right? Because of the Mentor. So I'm actually at 11 mana. Hollowmurk Siege. I guess the Menace, right, could make something more of a threat. 12 mana still. I mean, Market Back for 6 could just be fun. Make it a threat. Make it something somebody would want to get off the battlefield. I hate that I don't have a way to sacrifice it. But a way to sacrifice this, it'd be top tier because then I could draw the cards off of it, right? Again, Rosie could be fun. The problem with Rosie is I have no way to make a token at the moment, so Rosie isn't as solid at the moment. Like I said, I'm kind of just thinking market back for 6 just to get some value down. That if I picked the Siege, that would draw me a card, but I think I'm going to pick the Menace. Go to that Menace, put the Menace on Anafenza. Anafenza, I guess, can put it on Conclave Mentor. We'll have the Lenore put it on itself. That still draws us a card. Now we've got some, nice attackers getting in. And I think we're in not a bad state. The problem is we just didn't see anything else to really like punch this board through. We'd love to see something like Trample or Lifelink, right? I think here probably the only downside of this game. Otherwise, I think we saw a lot of really good stuff. But let's get into playtest number 3. Keeping a 1/2 True-lander with an Incubation Druid, so a way to tap for mana, and whenever you get a counter on it, it taps for 3 mana. Again, really easy with Anafenza, right? Because Anafenza can put a counter on it, and we would have all of our colors. Armorcraft Judge comes in and draws a card for each counter. We have on a creature, Mana Gorger grows and counters, Baron Step right counters at each end step. Sovereign Arca now grows, so I like it. Turn will play the Sand Step, sit on that, pretty much fixed all the colors I think we were going to have an issue with, because we can go in Incubation Druid here. I thought here is Anafenza. Because now, right, Anafenza can put that counter on Incubation Druid as long as we use the mana for it, right? But now we have 5. Johnny can just straight up hand out counters to each of our creatures if we wanted to. So could Baron Step. I think getting down something like Mana Gorger Hydra could make sense. The nice part about, like, if we go with, like, the Akaneka How, my thought is I could play a Johnny next turn and just give everything a counter, and then it's set up and good to go. So Anafenza attacks, right, putting the counter here, and now we're set up for 3 mana this turn, so we've got 8 mana now. Because now my thought is a Johnny plus, I guess, Baron Step. It could make some sense to not go too hard there and hedge our bets on this Cultivate, just to make sure that we get some more lands. But I'm going to be a little bit greedy on this playtest. And we'll remove 2 counters from a Johnny, giving a counter to everybody. Go to combat, attack. We'll let Anafenza go off first, and I guess I'll just give it here. And then everybody gets as many as they have, right? So now Anafenza is a 6/6. This is a 7/8, right? Go to end step, Baron Step Siege, puts a counter on everything, right? So now we're in great shape, getting lots of counters on our creatures. But there's the Ozolith, that helps, right? Could stave off those. I kind of like starting with the Armorcraft Judge. This is going to come in and draw me 3 cards, right? There's the Herd Bailiff. Not a bad way to start. That would actually get me a token every turn, right? Because of the Baron Step Siege. So that was my 4 mana. I've got basically 5 mana left. Unfortunately, not in the right colors for Herd Bailiff. So I think we just go, what? Absent Falconer plus the Ozolith. If I crack off a Johnny again, these will all get counters this turn. Although these are the only 2 that can attack, right? These 2 came in this turn. I don't think we need to crack a Johnny. We'll just gain some life, right? Because all of our creatures have vigilance. Go and attack. We'll have Anafenza put its counter on. Oh, I guess it doesn't because of the vigilance. That's, I guess, the only downside. Well, I guess I can put it on, right, Incubation, because we tapped it for mana. 5 here, 3 here, right? And then on end step, everybody gets under their counter from the Baron Step Siege. And I think we're just in good shape. Now they all have life, or they had lifelink as soon as the Absent Falconer came down, so we were gaining a ton of life that turn. This turn we could go for something like Fangs of Colonia to double up those counters, gain even more life if nobody has a response, and just keep pushing that advantage forward. Let's go one more playtest, keeping a 4-laner here with Virtual Loyalty, Kutzel, and Rampant Growth. Kutzel kind of plays double duty, prevents our opponents from playing spells on our turn, and whenever one of our creatures with power greater than its base power hits a player, we get to draw a card. So again, it can be really nice to get a lot of value. I guess we can just start with our plains. Get into our Sun Petal Grove. I got 2 black pieces in my hand. I got 3 white. I got 2 green. Just thinking the swamp, just to be safe. guess I could Anafenza, set something up next turn. We could go for the Revival of the Ancestors and just make a couple tokens. We'll go Kutzel. This turn here, I'm thinking Anafenza, and I'll make this token, I guess. Make the knight. Kutzel can attack if we wanted to, but it's not as necessary. Kicking back to our turn, now we got 6 mana. I love the idea of just slamming these two down, but I have no way to give out counters right at this point. Anafenza is only going to give, well, 1 counter out, so I guess that would be, what, flying and that for Kutzel. Kutzel would draw us a card, right? I guess all we need now is a way to get counters on all of our creatures, which I guess Revival could do now on its second step. Right, so maybe this is the turn we do that. Make the 3 spirits. And next turn, we'll spread the counters around. But now this turn, right, we can attack, put the counter on Falconer, I guess, get it in the air, right, with that ability. Probably 2 card draws there. Now on this turn, right, we get to distribute 3 counters among 1, 2, or 3 creatures. So we'll go 1, 2, 3. Let's do it on the knight. Again, just getting more creatures in the air. Next turn, we give our whole board Trample and Lifelink. We can kind of really prep for that, right? 6 mana. We can give them all Death Touch. We can hold up this for some protection. Kind of like the Envoy and just holding up Inspiring Call for protection. On attack, I mean, it doesn't really matter. I guess we could technically, now that I think about it, we could give a counter to one of the spirits, right? If we attack with them, right? Getting it in the air, getting some, damage in through the air. We probably end up drawing. Is it a May? So it'd be the max is 3, right? Because it's 3 opponents, and then there's our land for turn. And again, now Trample and Lifelink right off the Ancients, and I think we're just in great shape. The best way we could do it would be get mass counters on all of our creatures. I just have no way to do that. Inspiring Call could potentially draw me into a couple more cards. I'd have 5 mana. I mean, you never know what you get yourself into. My only thought there is they already have Trample and Lifelink. Why not give them Indestructible? Just making sure that they are going to hit for sure. I mean, there's the talent. Truthfully, we didn't hit anything better, but I think it was worth trying just for the purpose of the playtest. But let me know, what do you think of Anafenza down in the comment section below. Again, I think it's a really interesting commander. I think I kind of like the idea of Felwithar a little bit better, that we'll talk about later this week. You can let me know what you think, and I will catch you all in the next one.